The night was too quiet for a city that never really slept. Streetlights hummed softly, flickering over rain-slick pavement, while far above the skyline towers of glass shimmered like ghosts. Somewhere on the 47th floor of one of those towers, Kaito Tanaka sat alone in his office. A man who could move markets with a whisper, but couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken his name with warmth. He was a billionaire, a legend of precision and profit, but in that moment he looked like someone lost in the noise of his own success. The only sound in the room was the gentle ticking of an antique clock, one his father had given him decades ago. It was a reminder of time, not as numbers, but as something that always runs out. He had just signed the final document for a merger that would make his company untouchable when his phone began to ring. At first he ignored it. Calls after midnight rarely meant anything good. The screen showed an unknown number, a local line. For a man who lived surrounded by security, filtered contact lists, and layers of assistance, an unknown call was an anomaly. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then instinct, or maybe fate, had made him answer. "Mr. Tanaka?" The voice on the other end was trembling but clear. It was a young woman's voice, hesitant yet urgent, like someone forcing herself to stay calm when every nerve was on fire. "Please, you don't know me, but I think your son is hurt." For a moment, Kaito didn't move. The words didn't make sense. His mind tried to file them somewhere logical. A mistake, a scam, another stranger fishing for money. But something in her tone and the way she said hurt, not injured, not unwell, but hurt, made his heart stumble. "Who is this?" he asked, sharper than he meant to. "My name's Luna," she said, voice shaking. "I'm outside on Kenson Street near the corner of Ridgeway. I found a young man. I checked his wallet. It has your name. His ID says Ren Tanaka. He's unconscious. Please come quickly." Silence fell between them, thick and electric. Kaito rose from his chair, the pen in his hand dropping soundlessly onto the carpet. His son's name hit the air like a blow. Ren. The boy who had inherited his sharp eyes and colder silence. The son he hadn't spoken to in months, not since their last argument ended with slammed doors and words they both regretted. Ren had always chased danger, chasing freedom like it was oxygen. And now, at nearly 2 a.m, a stranger was telling him that his only child was lying in the street. "Is he breathing?" Kaito's voice cracked for the first time in years. I think so, barely. He's cold, there's a bruise on his head. I already called an ambulance, but they're taking long. I didn't know what else to do." "You did the right thing," Kaito said quickly, already moving. He was out the door before he even realized he'd taken his coat, his phone still pressed to his ear. The elevator ride felt endless. His reflection stared back at him. A man who looked powerful but felt powerless. "Stay with him. Don't move him until the ambulance arrives. Tell me, is there anyone else around?" "No," Luna whispered. "It's just me. Everyone else walks past. Nobody wants to stop." Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't want to either, but then I saw his hand twitch. I couldn't just leave him there. There was something in her honesty that hit him deeper than he expected. Compassion. Raw, uncalculated, inconvenient compassion, the kind that money couldn't buy. Outside, the city stretched before him in streaks of silver and rain. His driver hadn't even asked for directions. One look at Kaito's face had been enough. The car sped through empty streets, every traffic light blurring past in red and green reflections. His thoughts chased themselves. What if this was a trap? What if it was already too late? What if Ren had finally gone too far? Meanwhile, Luna sat on the cold sidewalk, rain starting to fall harder. Her fingers were numb from holding her phone, but she kept talking. Anything to keep the billionaire on the line, to keep herself calm. "I don't know who he is to you," she said softly, "but he looks kind of lost, like he was running from something." Kaito's voice softened almost involuntarily. "You said your name was Luna?" "Yes." "Thank you, Luna." The words surprised both of them. When the car screeched to a stop near Ridgeway, Kaito barely waited for it to halt before stepping out into the rain. He saw her immediately. A young woman in a worn jacket kneeling beside a man on the ground. Her skin glowed under the streetlight, a quiet defiance against the storm around her. Beside her, his son lay motionless, pale, his breathing shallow. For one moment, everything stopped. The rain, the city, the noise. Just a father, his son, and a stranger who refused to look away. Kaito knelt beside them, ignoring the wet pavement. "Ren," he whispered, brushing the hair from his son's forehead. "Can you hear me?" No answer. Only the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Luna looked up at him, eyes wide with empathy and fear. "He was already like this when I found him," she said quickly, as if afraid he might blame her. "I tried to check his pulse. It's weak, but it's there. I think he fell. Maybe someone pushed him?" He looked at her properly then, really looked. She couldn't have been older than 20, maybe a student or a hotel worker judging by her uniform. But her presence was steady, anchored in a kind of courage that money couldn't measure. "You did more than most people would," Kaito said quietly. She shrugged, her voice barely audible over the rain. "He's someone's son. That's all that mattered." And in that instant, something inside the billionaire cracked. The armor built from years of power, pride, and distance. He realized how small all of it was compared to the fragile weight of a heartbeat. As the ambulance arrived and medics rushed forward, Luna stepped back, her hands trembling. She had done her part. She could have left and no one would have known her name. But she stayed, watching as they lifted Ren onto the stretcher, watching the billionaire who looked suddenly human, shouting directions with a voice that trembled at the edges, and then she whispered, almost to herself, "I hope he wakes up." Kaito turned to her, rainwater streaking down his face. "He will," he said, "because someone cared enough to call." The sirens wailed, the ambulance pulled away, and Luna was left standing alone beneath the streetlight, unaware that her one act of kindness had set in motion a story that would unravel everything hidden behind the billionaire's perfect life. Rain had a strange way of washing away noise, leaving only truth behind. After the ambulance disappeared into the night, the street seemed almost too quiet. The puddles shimmered beneath flickering streetlights, and Luna stood frozen, the echo of sirens fading into the distance. For a long moment she didn't move. Her hands were still trembling from adrenaline, and she could still feel the warmth of Ren's pulse faintly under her fingertips, fragile, fading, but real. She didn't know why she couldn't leave. Maybe it was the way the billionaire's voice had cracked when he said, "Because someone cared enough to call." Maybe it was the way his son looked, not like the privileged child of wealth, but like a boy who'd been running from something no one else could see. Luna worked as a server at the Imperial Grand, a hotel where luxury came with silence, the kind where people tipped you for pretending not to notice. Her shift had ended hours ago. She should have gone home, but something about the figure lying on the wet pavement had stopped her. People walked around him, a man too well dressed to be homeless, too broken to be ignored, and yet no one stopped. Except her. Now she stood under the same streetlight, the world moving again around her, taxis passing by, neon lights reflecting in puddles. She thought of calling the hospital, but what would she say? "Hi, I'm the girl who called the ambulance for your billionaire's son." No one would care. She sighed, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold, and began walking. But just as she turned the corner, she heard someone call out, "Miss?" She stopped, turning slowly. Kaito Tanaka was there, still standing by the curb, his coat soaked through. The image was almost surreal. A man known for commanding boardrooms now standing alone in the rain, looking for the girl who'd made a phone call that mattered. "Please," he said, catching his breath slightly. "Wait," Luna hesitated, unsure if she was in trouble. "Is he okay?" she asked immediately. "They're stabilizing him now," Kaito said. His voice was quieter, more human this time. "He's being transferred to St. Gabriel's Medical. The doctor said the head injury isn't fatal, but..." He trailed off. "He's been unconscious for almost an hour." Luna nodded, relief and worry twisting together. "I'm glad he's alive." Kaito stepped closer, searching her face as if trying to understand why she'd stopped at all. "You didn't have to help him," he said softly. "Most people wouldn't have." "I couldn't just walk away," she replied. "I kept thinking, if it were my brother, I'd want someone to stop." He looked down, the weight of her words pressing on him. There was something in her honesty, simple, unadorned, that made him feel small. For years, his world had been built on control. Everything had a price, a strategy, a calculated purpose. But this act of selfless compassion, it didn't belong in his world. And yet it had just saved his son's life. "Let me drive you home," he said suddenly. Luna blinked. "Oh no, you don't have to." "I insist," he interrupted. "It's the least I can do." She hesitated, but the rain was relentless. Finally, she nodded. "All right." The car, a sleek black sedan that looked like it cost more than her entire apartment building, pulled up quietly. Inside, the leather smelled faintly of cedar. She sat awkwardly in the back seat, hands folded in her lap, trying not to touch anything. Cato sat beside her, silent for most of the ride, his mind somewhere else entirely. After a while, Luna spoke. "He's going to wake up," she said, more like a hope than a statement. Cato turned to her. "You sound certain." "I don't know," she admitted. He didn't look ready to die. Some people, you can just tell. They fight even when they're not awake. He studied her face, realizing she was speaking from experience, not theory. There was something about the quiet strength in her voice that told him she'd seen pain before, the kind that didn't come from money or privilege, but survival. As the car stopped outside her small apartment building, Luna reached for the door handle, then paused. "You should stay close to him tonight," she said softly. "Even if he doesn't wake up right away, people can still feel when someone's there." Cato nodded. "Thank you, Luna." She gave a small, tired smile. "Just doing what anyone should do." But as she stepped out into the rain and disappeared up the narrow stairway, Kaito Tanaka knew she was wrong. Most people wouldn't have done what she did. Hours later, under the sterile light of a hospital room, Kaito sat beside his son's bed, staring at the motionless figure connected to tubes and monitors. Ren looked so young, so unguarded, so unlike the rebellious man he had become. The machines beeped softly, steady but uncertain. Doctors had said he'd suffered a concussion, the result of a fall or possibly an attack. And they couldn't be sure yet. Police would ask questions. But all Kaito could think about was Luna's voice, steady through the chaos. "He's someone's son. That's all that mattered." He leaned forward, taking Ren's hand, a hand that once clung to his as a child when life was simpler, before money had turned affection into silence. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere this time." Outside the hospital, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Somewhere miles away, in a small apartment with flickering lights, Luna lay awake, staring at her ceiling. She told herself she'd done what anyone would do, but deep down, she knew that moment, that call, had changed her life too. Because in a city full of people who never looked twice, she had looked once, and it had been enough to alter the course of two lives. And as the night slowly gave way to dawn, one thought lingered in both their minds. Why was Ren Tanaka lying in the street that night? Was it an accident, a choice, or something darker that neither of them yet understood? Somewhere, in the quiet hum of the hospital, Ren's finger twitched. A small movement, a whisper of life. And far away, Luna sat up in bed, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. Fate, it seemed, was just getting started. Morning came quietly, creeping through the blinds of the hospital room in thin golden threads. The storm had passed, but its memory still lingered in puddles and reflections outside. Machines hummed softly, their rhythm steady now, a faint pulse of life returning. Kaito Tanaka sat motionless beside his son's bed, eyes heavy from a night without sleep. He had spent hours watching Ren breathe, his chest rising and falling in shallow, fragile waves. Doctors had assured him there was no immediate danger. The injury was serious but not irreversible. Still, something didn't fit. Ren wasn't the kind of man who simply fell unconscious in the middle of the street. His son had always been careful, always aware, even in his recklessness. Kaito's mind drifted through memory like a man sifting through shards of glass. The last conversation they'd had replayed endlessly, harsh words thrown across the space of pride and misunderstanding. Ren had accused him of being heartless, of caring more for reputation than people. Kaito had told him that one day he'd understand that power was the only way to protect what mattered. But now, looking at his son's still face, all that talk of power felt meaningless. The door opened quietly. Dr. Reeves stepped in, a man with kind eyes and a voice too calm for the chaos he managed daily. "He's stable," the doctor said gently. "But there's something else you should know." Kaito stood, the old corporate instinct snapping back. "What is it?" The doctor hesitated. "We found traces of a sedative in his bloodstream. It's mild, not lethal, but it wasn't prescribed. He didn't collapse naturally. Someone drugged him." The words landed like ice. "Drugged?" Kaito repeated, disbelief sharpening his tone. "Yes," Dr. Reeves replied. "It's possible he was attacked, or someone gave it to him without his knowledge." We're running further tests. Kaito's jaw tightened. For the first time in years, fear turned into anger. Not the loud kind that breaks things, but the quiet, dangerous kind that demands answers. I want to know who did this, he said coldly. When the doctor left, Kaito turned back to his son. Ren's hand twitched again, just slightly, but enough to make his heart leap. The machines beeped faster for a moment, then steadied. He leaned closer. Ren, if you can hear me, hold on. We'll find out what happened. I promise. At that same moment, across the city, Luna sat in the small corner of the hotel cafeteria, her uniform freshly ironed, but her thoughts scattered. She hadn't slept. The image of the unconscious man haunted her, and so did the face of his father. There was something about the billionaire that unsettled her. Not fear exactly, but wait, as if he carried a kind of sadness that couldn't be measured in money. Luna, her supervisor called, snapping her out of her thoughts. Table 9 needs service. VIP guests. Move fast. She nodded automatically, grabbing a tray and weaving through the maze of polished tables and murmured conversations. But when she reached table 9, she froze, sitting there. Talking quietly with a man in a dark suit was Kaito Tanaka. He looked different in the daylight, sharper, controlled again, his grief tucked neatly behind the armor of professionalism. When he saw her, recognition flickered across his face. Luna, he said softly, dismissing his companion with a gesture. Her voice trembled slightly. Mr. Tanaka, I didn't know you'd be here. I needed to see you, he said simply. May we talk for a moment? Her supervisor gave her a look that said, if this man's a billionaire, you say yes. So she nodded, following him to a quieter corner of the lounge. I owe you more than thanks, he began. My son is stable. The doctors say someone might have drugged him. Her eyes widened. Drugged him? But why? That's what I intend to find out, he replied, his tone low and deliberate. You were the first person to find him. Did you notice anyone nearby? Anything unusual? She tried to remember. The rain, the dim lights, the way people had walked by without stopping. There was a black car parked across the street, she said slowly. Engine running, lights off. I thought someone was waiting for him, but it drove off when I called the ambulance. Kaito's gaze sharpened. Did you see the plate number? She shook her head. No, I'm sorry. He nodded, more thoughtful than disappointed. You've helped enough already. I'll handle the rest. But Luna couldn't shake the feeling that something about his calmness wasn't real. Beneath his control there was fear, deep and quiet, like a storm waiting to break. Before she could speak again, he said, If you remember anything, call this number. He handed her a sleek black card with a gold-embossed emblem. It didn't have a name, just a number. Don't share it with anyone. She tucked it into her pocket, feeling the weight of it, heavier than it should have been. When he left, the world seemed to blur again into routine. Customers, orders, polite smiles. But Luna's mind kept drifting back to the look in his eyes when he mentioned his son. It wasn't just worry. It was guilt. By evening, Kaito was back at the hospital, standing by Ren's bedside. He hadn't eaten. His assistant had called 10 times. Business could wait. There was a knock on the door. Detective Clara Hensley, a woman known for her calm precision, stepped inside. Mr. Tanaka, she greeted, flipping open her notebook. We're treating this as a possible assault. Your son's phone was missing. Any idea where he might have been before the incident? Kaito hesitated. He hasn't been living at home. We disagreed on some things. Disagreed how? He sighed. He wanted to work outside the family business. I wanted him protected. That's all. The detective nodded, unconvinced but polite. We'll find out who did this. But I'll be honest. People like your son don't end up unconscious on empty streets by accident. When she left, Kaito sank back into his chair. The truth was something he'd avoided for too long. Ren had been drifting away for months. Parties, reckless friends, long nights that turned into longer silences, and now that distance had become dangerous. He looked at his son again, feeling the ache of regret settle deep in his chest. For all his brilliance, all his wealth, he had failed at the simplest thing, being a father. As night fell once more, he stood by the window, the city stretching below like a living circuit of light. Somewhere out there was the girl who had stopped when no one else did. Somewhere out there was the car that had vanished into the rain. And somewhere between the two was the truth he didn't yet see coming. that Luna and Ren's lives were already bound together by something far older than chance. He didn't know it yet, but the night his son was found on the street was not the beginning of a tragedy. It was the unraveling of one that had started long ago, and before it was over, both the billionaire and the girl who saved his son would discover just how much fate could demand in exchange for mercy. Luna couldn't focus for days. Every sound in the hotel, the elevator chime, the rustle of a guest's coat, even the hum of the lobby music, seemed to echo the night she found him. Her hands still remembered the weight of his body, cold and trembling as she'd waited for help to arrive. But what haunted her most was Kaito Tanaka's eyes. Those eyes had looked like a storm trying to hide behind glass, calm on the surface, but ready to break at any moment. She told herself to move on. He was rich, powerful, and far beyond her world. She was a waitress, a name on a schedule, a pair of hands serving drinks no one remembered. But curiosity, that restless force that had always gotten her into trouble, wouldn't let go. One evening, when her shift ended, she found herself walking again toward the street where she had first found Ren. The rain had returned, softer now, brushing against her umbrella like whispered secrets. The spot was almost empty, except for a few flickering lamps and a stray newspaper skidding along the curb. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the ground where he'd lain. Something glinted faintly in the gutter. She crouched, reaching down, and picked it up. It was a small silver cufflink, engraved with a crest she didn't recognize. Not Ren's, it looked too old, too deliberate. The design showed a phoenix rising through a circle of water. Her instincts told her it mattered. She slipped it into her pocket and went home, her mind turning over every possibility. Who had drugged him? Why was a billionaire's son lying unconscious on a forgotten street? And why did it feel like she had stepped into something far deeper than coincidence? Later that night, unable to sleep, Luna searched online for Tanaka family crest. Nothing. Then she searched for the phoenix emblem and found a match, but not in Japan. It belonged to an old European shipping company that had once partnered with Tanaka Maritime Holdings decades ago. The company had gone bankrupt after a mysterious fire in their docks, one that claimed several lives. She scrolled through photos of the aftermath. Charred warehouses, smoke, shattered containers. And then in one grainy photo, she froze. A woman, dark-skinned, wearing a maid's uniform, stood near the wreckage holding a small child. The caption read, "Survivors of the Tokyo Dock Fire, 1999. Luna's breath caught. The woman looked exactly like her mother. Her heart began to pound. Could it be? Her mother had never spoken much about her past. Only that she had once worked overseas, that something terrible had happened, and that they'd come to start fresh. She'd always avoided questions, always said, "Some stories don't belong to us anymore." But what if this story did? The next morning, Luna took the cufflink and the printed photo and went back to the hospital. She didn't have an appointment, but when the staff saw her holding Kaito's black card, they let her through. Kaito was in the room, sitting beside his son again. Ren looked a little better. Color returning to his face, a steady breath rising and falling under the thin hospital sheet. When Luna entered, Kaito looked up immediately. "You came." "Yes," she said quietly. "I found something." She handed him the cufflink. He took it, and for a moment his calm mask broke. His eyes widened, recognition, fear, then disbelief. "Where did you find this?" "Near where your son was lying." Kaito turned the small object in his hand. "This belonged to someone I once knew," he murmured. "Years ago." She hesitated, then pulled out the photograph. "And this?" When his eyes fell on the image, the color drained from his face. He leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get this?" "I found it online," she said. "That woman, she looks like my mother." He didn't speak for a long time. Then quietly, "What is your mother's name?" "Amara," Luna said. Kaito's fingers tightened around the photo. He looked at her for a long time, really looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Amara," he repeated slowly. "Then you are—" He stopped himself, shaking his head as if he'd almost said too much. "What?" Luna pressed. "What do you know about her?" But before he could answer, the door opened. A nurse hurried in. "Mr. Tanaka, your son's awake." Luna turned, heart racing as Ren stirred in the bed. His eyes blinked open, confusion swimming through them. He groaned softly, pressing a hand to his head. Ren, Kaito said, his voice trembling for the first time in years. You're safe. You're in the hospital. Ren looked around slowly, his gaze landing on Luna. For a moment neither spoke, as if some recognition passed between them without words. You, he whispered. You found me, she nodded. Yes, you were unconscious. I called for help. His lips curved into a faint, tired smile. Then I guess I owe you my life. Kaito stepped closer, but his son flinched slightly, not from fear, but from something heavier. You shouldn't be here, Ren murmured. It's not safe. Kaito frowned. What do you mean? Who did this to you? Ren closed his eyes. I can't remember everything. Just voices, arguing, a car, then nothing. The doctor entered, urging them to give him space, and Luna stepped back. But her mind was already spinning. Kaito knew her mother. Ren might know something about the attack. And that cufflink, it wasn't just an accessory. It was a message from the past. As she left the room, Kaito followed her into the corridor. His face was pale, his voice low. Luna, he said carefully. What I'm about to tell you must stay between us. She nodded, though she wasn't sure why she trusted him. Your mother and I, he began, once worked together. She was part of the Tanaka household staff in the late 90s. There was a fire, an accident, we were told, but I never believed it. That fire destroyed records, killed several employees, and ended partnerships that built my empire. If your mother survived, she might know things I was never meant to find out. Luna's heart raced. So you think whoever drugged your son might be connected to that fire? I don't think, he said grimly. I know. They stood in silence, the weight of history pressing down between them. Two strangers bound by a tragedy that neither had chosen. One buried under privilege, the other beneath forgotten ashes. Finally, Kaito said, Find your mother. Ask her about the fire. If what I suspect is true, then my enemies never stopped watching. Luna looked into his eyes, seeing something new there, not just power, not just fear, but a quiet desperation. The kind that only comes from realizing the past is not finished with you yet. When she left the hospital, the rain had stopped. The streets shimmered under pale sunlight. But the city felt different now, not peaceful, but waiting, watching. She didn't know it yet, but what she would discover next would break open a secret that had been buried for more than 2 decades. And when it did, the line between savior and enemy would blur until neither she nor Kaito could tell which side they were on. Luna didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her small apartment bed, the silver cufflink resting in her palm like a piece of fate she hadn't asked for. The photo of her mother lay beside it, Amara's face frozen in that moment of smoke and fear. The city outside pulsed with quiet life, the hum of traffic, the distant siren, the whisper of wind against her window. But all Luna could hear was Kaito's voice repeating in her mind. Find your mother. Ask her about the fire. By dawn, she made up her mind. Her mother worked the morning shift at a small nursing home on the edge of the city. Luna took the first train, her heart pounding with every station that passed. She wasn't sure what she'd say. Hey, Mom, did you survive a billionaire's industrial fire and forget to mention it? Didn't sound like an easy conversation starter. When she arrived, Amara was arranging flowers on a patient's bedside table. The years had been gentle to her. The same calm smile, the same careful hands that once held Luna through storms and sickness. But when Amara turned and saw the photo in Luna's hand, the smile faltered. Where did you get that? She whispered. You tell me, Luna said softly. Is that you? Amara sat down, her eyes glistening with something between fear and resignation. Yes, she said after a long silence. That's me. That fire. I never wanted you to know. Luna sank into the chair across from her. Why? You worked for Kaito Tanaka, didn't you? Her mother nodded. I was a housekeeper in his estate, but more than that, I was part of the shipping division's records team. I saw things, Luna. Things I shouldn't have. What things? Amara took a deep breath. They were smuggling technology, restricted machinery, hidden inside shipments marked as charity supplies. Kaito didn't know. He was overseas. His partners did it behind his back. using his company name to cover their crimes. When I found out, I reported it. The next week, the warehouse burned down. Luna's throat tightened. You were there? I barely made it out alive. Many didn't. Her eyes clouded. When I came home, everything was gone. My job, my records, my safety. I changed my name, moved here. I thought if I stayed quiet, the past would forget me. Luna leaned forward. Then who? Who attacked Ren? Amara shook her head. Someone trying to finish what they started. If Kaido's son is in danger, it means someone uncovered the truth I buried. Luna's pulse raced. Then we have to tell him. He thinks the fire was an accident. Her mother reached out and gripped her hand. No, Luna. The people behind that fire still exist. Powerful men. You go to him, and you'll put yourself in danger too. Luna's voice broke. Mom, I already am. That night she returned to the hospital. Kaido was there, pacing the hall, his phone buzzing in his hand. His eyes darkened when he saw her. What did she say? He demanded. She told me the fire wasn't an accident, Luna said. Your partners were smuggling restricted tech. She reported it. The fire was meant to silence her. Kaido's expression turned to stone. Names. She didn't give any, but she said whoever was behind it is still alive. Before Kaido could respond, a nurse rushed out of Ren's room. Sir, your son, he's gone. They burst inside. The bed was empty, the window open. The IV tube hung loose, swaying gently. Luna's heart slammed. Where could he? Kaido's phone vibrated again. An anonymous message flashed on the screen. Stop digging, Tanaka. You already lost one legacy. Don't lose the other. Kaido's jaw clenched. They have him. Luna felt a chill creep through her. Then we get him back. Hours later, they drove through the night following a GPS ping from Ren's smartwatch, one that had reactivated a few miles out of the city near the old docks. The same docks that had burned 25 years ago. The air was heavy with salt and smoke. Rusted cranes stood like skeletons against the fog. As they stepped out, Luna saw movement in the shadows. A figure standing near the water. Ren. He looked pale, dazed, but alive. Behind him stood another man, older with sharp eyes and an expensive coat. Kaido froze. Mori. The man smiled coldly. Still pretending to be innocent, Kaido. You caused the fire, Kaido said through clenched teeth. You killed those people. Mori shrugged. Collateral damage. You built your empire on my silence, remember? Luna stepped forward. He didn't. My mother told me everything. You used Tanaka's name to cover your crimes. You framed him. Mori's eyes narrowed. Your mother? He sneered. So she survived. Kaido stepped in front of Luna. You won't touch her. Mori laughed softly. Touch her? No. But I can erase every trace of your little heroics again, starting with your son. Ren took a shaky step back, but Mori pulled a small pistol from his coat. Luna's breath caught. Then without warning, Kaido lunged forward. The gun went off, a deafening crack splitting the air. Mori stumbled, clutching his arm. The gun fell into the water. Ren rushed to his father's side, catching him before he fell. Dad, Kaido groaned, a thin line of blood on his shoulder. It's nothing. He looked at Luna. Get your mother. Bring her to me. We finish this together. Luna nodded, tears stinging her eyes. For the first time, the billionaire didn't look untouchable. He looked human, vulnerable, bleeding, but still standing. By morning, the police had arrived. Mori was gone, disappeared into the city like smoke, but his empire had begun to crumble. Kaido used every resource, every name to expose the truth. The fire, the smuggling, the cover-ups. It all came out. Amara agreed to testify. Her words reopened an investigation thought long dead. And though danger still loomed, there was finally light breaking through the years of silence. Ren recovered, slowly, his friendship with Luna deepening into something unspoken, a shared understanding of survival. Two lives born from opposite worlds joined by a single act of compassion on a rainy night. One evening, as Luna stood again outside the hotel where it had all begun, Kaito approached her. His arm was still in a sling. "I owe you more than thanks," he said. "You gave me back my son, and the truth." Luna smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for gratitude. I just couldn't walk away." He nodded, studying her quietly. "You remind me of your mother." She looked down, then back at him. "She told me something once, and that kindness is never wasted even when the world forgets it." Kaito smiled for the first time, a real smile, warm and weary. "Then maybe, Luna, the world finally remembered." He offered his hand. She took it. Behind them, the city moved on, bright, noisy, alive. But somewhere beneath it all, the past finally rested. And in that strange balance between guilt and grace, between power and truth, a new beginning quietly took root. Because sometimes, the cost of truth isn't what you lose. It's what you finally find.